So I'm speaking to you about the work that I'm most passionate about, which is assisting people to connect with their unborn babies or their babies once they have been birthed as already. I want to start the talk with a little quote from another one of the soul doulas that I work with. Her name is Helen Bem. She says, "When I was pregnant with my first child, I received advice from many different sources. Some of it I kept and used. Most of it I discarded. For some reason, people find it necessary to give pregnant women advice, whether or not it is required or requested. I did get one piece of advice that was extremely useful. In fact, the same piece of advice helped me through pregnancy, labor, and still serves me well now in parenthood. The same source of advice also gave my husband the peace of mind that he needed for the home birth I'd hoped for and that we had planned. The source of the advice you want to know? From the child that I was carrying, my unborn baby. How? In the form of images he gave me while I was in a relaxed, meditative frame of mind." And what we know in terms, I just want to give a little bit of background information that you probably are mostly aware of already in terms of the significance of being able to communicate with our babies in the womb and in early parenting. So what we know about babies is that they're born with billions of neurons, many more than we have as adults, because they haven't yet died off. And what they do early on in life, in pregnancy, at birth, and in the first couple of years of life, is they're creating neuronal pathways that are created by whether they are having healthy experiences in life or whether they are experiencing things that are more difficult to deal with. And so these neuronal pathways, the more that they're fired, the more set they become. They become like highways, and the pathways that are not used become like weedy, overgrown paths. Okay, so what we know in terms of information that other people have been working on as their sort of life work is people like Niels and Jill Bergman have done wonderful work on skin-to-skin contact. And they talk about the baby's need for love, for security or safety, and for nourishment in order to build healthy pathways. There's a woman called Sue Gerhardt who wrote a book called Why Love Matters, who takes us a little bit further and speaks about how early behavioral patterns that are set actually create either functional or dysfunctional adults. And so these early imprints actually become the underlying cause of how we behave as adults. The third slide at the bottom that isn't of anyone in particular, but out of the field of ethology or the study of animal behavior, they talk about this term, they coined a term called imprint vulnerability, and recognize that for animals and humans, there are certain areas in life, certain times in life, when we are really open to the imprints of our environment at all different levels of consciousness. And of course, birth is a time of intense imprint vulnerability. Babies are very, very open to the experiences that they go through at that time. And then the fourth image that I've got there is of a man, that's Stanislav Grof. He and many other people are involved in the in transpersonal psychology, where they consider that what we experience in terms of waking consciousness is a very small element of who we are as beings, and that a large portion of our consciousness is either subconscious, as in the iceberg, much of it is kind of hidden and not obvious, and also that as part of our brains, much of it remains dormant through our lives, so we're only using a very small portion of our brains, and have forgotten actually how to use an enormous amount of it. Also, they talk about the fact that this consciousness precedes birth and continues after death as well. So in terms of communicating with babies, what we're doing is we're trying to access some of the deeper levels of consciousness that we're not normally aware of and that we have forgotten how to use. So the language of communicating with babies is pre-verbal. Babies still know how to do it. They find it very easy to tune in to the messages and images that we send them. And the language that we use, because it's pre-verbal, actually uses images, thoughts, feelings instead of concepts. Okay. It's similar to the language that a horse whisperer might use in order to engage with the feelings of an animal, or perhaps what Aboriginal elders, how they, in the old times when they would have to kind of traverse vast areas of desert-like terrain in Australia without knowing where to go, they would access something that they called the song lines or dream time. And that would kind of give them an intuitive sense of where to find water, etc., etc. This is the similar type of communication that we use with babies, and it's remarkably easy for us all to do. In fact, there's one other thing I just want to mention, which is that in terms of this language being pre-verbal rather than verbal, if I don't know much about it, but the whole myth, I can't think of the right word for it, of the Tower of Babel, of people all coming in and speaking different languages and not being able to understand it, speaks about the time when humans actually developed language and then moved into a place of not being able to understand one another with the same sense of authenticity, because language goes along with being able to be a little bit deceitful and so on as well. So language is something that we use more with a sense of relating to our cognitive thought patterns, whereas pre-verbal language is much more intuitive. Okay. There was a movie that was showing recently called The Animal Communicator, and about a woman in Cape Town called Anna Breitenbach. And what I found fascinating about this movie, because of course this is the same language that we're speaking, is that whenever she was talking to the camera, she just looked like you or me, but as soon as she started actually interacting with animals, her face became incredibly soft and open, and she had very definitely moved into an altered state of consciousness. And so if we look at brain waves and where we communicate based from in terms of where our brain waves are resonating, it's somewhere between alpha and theta. So alpha is the state of deep relaxation, and theta is moving into deeper meditation and dreamlike sleep. So somewhere on the edge, in between the two, at around 7.5 hertz, is the place where we can really access images that come to us and where we can send images out that can be received most easily. So as I mentioned, the language of communication is through the imagination. And we kind of consider imagination to be something quite childlike, but in fact, the imagination is the language of the soul, and it's the language of the deeper levels of consciousness. It speaks in symbols and imagery. Okay. And in terms of imagination, what we do is we can either have the images as quite fuzzy, or they can be very, very clear. They can be kind of in the forefront of our consciousness, or like really kind of quite detailed in the background and so on as well. But the interesting thing about imagination is that it's not just visual. We're talking about what we can imagine visually, what we can hear, what we can smell, what we feel, etc. So, for instance, if we wanted to send an image to our unborn baby, and we wanted it to be of something of the connection that we have. The slide is of a mother who is deeply connected to her baby. What we want to do then is find an image that speaks of that connection from this place of deep relaxation. Okay, so go into a place of deep relaxation and then create an image that speaks of this connection. So if we, for instance, have a symbol of a heart that speaks of a connection to the baby, we would look at how it feels. Is it solid? Is it radiant? Is it light? Is it, what is the texture like, etc. 2 minutes left, thank you. Okay. And then what we do is we imagine the baby and we send those images that we've created to the baby. Notice whereabouts the baby draws the images into their body, and then get a sense of how does that change? How does the baby change in relation to what we're sending? So if this is a born child, we can actually notice the effect of the mental imagery. If it's unborn, we can often feel it within us or just imagine how it changes the baby. So what's useful about this technique is that we can use it during pregnancy, but we can also use it in labor. So if a woman is connecting to her baby in labor, it brings her into a more sacred space. It helps her to kind of really recognize the deeper meaning of what she's going through in labor, and it helps her to get into this relaxed state as well. Fathers can use it in labor in order to support the mother so she can be involved in the intensity of the experience of labor, and he's holding that sacred space of connection and communication. It's a very wonderful tool to use during a cesarean section. And I've been to a few cesareans where I was actually requested to go to help the woman stay connected to her baby during the operation. And what was fascinating to me and quite unexpected was how incredibly calm, alert, and aware those babies were, really connected to their parents. It was very interesting to me. And again, a very useful place to use this as if the baby is in any way separated from the mother. So if the baby's in an incubator, she can actually reduce any type of separation anxiety that might arise through staying connected with the baby on a mental and emotional level. And again, one other thing I just want to add is that she can use this to reduce previous separation anxiety as well. And then, of course, she can use it just to increase the bonding that's happening between her and the baby once it's born as well. So I just want to end with one last quote that came from a client who experienced using the process of connecting to her baby during birth. Her name is Anna. She says, during my active labor, I was able to hold the connection with my little girl because I had such a clear, open connection. My whole labor experience felt as very rural, natural, and intense. I didn't question anything in my mind that is otherwise very quick in having that little doubting question waiting somewhere. It felt empowered through the session and work I'd done to trust in the process and to trust in my unborn child that we are doing this journey together. It was like a firework in every cell of my body when she arrived, and she was lying completely relaxed on me, and our skins touched and our eyes met. It was completely calm, and she really felt safe to take her time to see, to feel, and to take a breath. Meanwhile, I had the feeling that our soul connection was like a roller coaster of neurons sharing love, joy, and life, and all sorts of other information that I can't put into words, as it feels like something that one can't put into words.